Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, your daily yoga podcast. I'm your host, Raghunath, with co-host Kaustubha Das, the senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City. We just like to say, welcome to the show. I'm trying a new approach today. So if you're new to the show, welcome. We study sacred literature of India, especially this one book we are just cruising through, the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's 18,000 verses of spiritual information. India is filled with lots of interesting info on everything from metaphysics to spirituality to astrology. And I mean, the Vedic canon of literature is quite fascinating, and it's always been a hub of spiritual information for millennium. This is when like Greece was in its infancy. I was just reading this incredible thing how a lot of times we have this, we give credit to like the word algebra came from the Arabs, which started studying the books of the Indians. So a lot of these original mathematics that we tend to give, and every country does this and every culture does this, but India really is the source of so much like information before it was disseminated to so many countries throughout the world. So we're diving deep into like the original teachings, and there's a lot of modern teachings and modern professors, so to speak, of yoga or swamis that are around. But we want to find out what's authentic, because sometimes what can happen is you get what's called the cult of personality. You get a person very charismatic. They might even look like a holy person, or they might say what you necessarily want to hear. But we are interested in sharpening our discernment, because from discernment, I'm not saying this, the Vedas are saying this. This is how you can really understand what is truth, what is myth truth, what is bona fide, and what is bogus. And so by studying the Bhagavatam, you can really apply discernment. When you hear someone speak, what category are they following? Are they making this stuff up? Are you trying to create a cult of personality? Or are you trying to transmit Vedic teachings? And this is what we want to do as yoga teachers. A lot of us here are yoga teachers. And a lot of us are also here because we love yoga. We love yoga philosophy. It's transformed our body. We want it to transform our consciousness. So we are in a great section right now. Kaustubha, you want to say anything?
No, I just want to check in, making sure you're all right up there. And is life good?
You know, the interesting thing about life up here is we're a little isolated anyway.
Yeah.
With us, there's our neighbors who are sort of homesteaders, and they have, kids my kids' age. So our kids are still, and our kids were homeschooled. So it's not like we've taken them out of school. Right. They've already just been home. And so it sort of appears like business as usual. There's no malls around here. There's no like strip malls. It's just like there's nothing around here. So it almost it could be after the apocalypse right now, or it could be just like another day.
You got a root cellar full of carrots and squash and stuff like that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Or should maybe I gotta be careful where I say that. People coming up with guns.
Oh, by the way, we should mention that it seems like due to the whole coronavirus thing that so many people are doing stuff on Zoom, that we weren't able to. Zoom is still processing yesterday's show.
Zoom now is the time to invest in stock in Zoom.
It's too late.
Last week was. I invested in here's my investment portfolio: toilet paper, Dial soap. Dial soap stock has gone through the roof. Is
and a hand gel.
hand wipes, baby wipes, yeah.
But in any case, so it seems like there's an overload on Zoom, and we're still Zoom is still processing. There's two choices when you record on Zoom, that you can record to the cloud or you can record to the hard drive. We were recording to the cloud and it's still processing it. So today we're recording to the hard drive. Hopefully we'll have no problem posting today's class. And in the future, if they're out of order, well, now you know why. Like if they're loaded up on Apple Podcasts or YouTube, in today's and yesterday's are out of order. That's why.
Yeah, everybody's talking about Zoom. We were here first. You feel like saying that? We were here. We knew all about you, Zoom. Anybody find themselves being completely neurotic about hand cleaning? I'm like, or even right now, I'm like, is this book clean? Do I have to dip this in Purell? Do I have to? I like when everybody comes in my door. I'm washing my hands with soap. How do I know that soap bottle's clean? I gotta wash the soap bottle. I gotta wash a bar of soap. Ever wash a bar of soap?
With another bar? You don't have to dip the Bhagavatam in because it's the Amala Purana.
It is already pure. The Amala Purana. But it's pure of the virus. The virus.
If the coronavirus were to touch the Bhagavatam, it would just immediately turn into like a deva.
Maybe that's what the scientists should be doing, applying the Bhagavatam. So even Mara has posted our morning prayers. So are we on yet? Did I say my own remote? Okay. So if you're new to the show, are we on? Or is this live? If you're new to the show, welcome. We have a Zoom group that's here. We have 91 people who are sitting at home, bored out of their minds. Just kidding. They're spiritually inspired. Like things to do today. Bhagavatam class, and the rest of the day is like, I don't know what to do. Anyway, thanks to all the people who are doing. There's a lot of people doing public works and things like that, and health and safety, and thank you. So anyway, if you're new to this, you can join our Zoom group. We're almost maxed out. We maxed out at 100, I think. So we have 91 today. But you'd have to contact Mara at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. And then we have this whole elaborate transcendental maze of joy called patreon.com/wisdomofthesages, where we are always uploading new shows and classes. I do my Sweet Baby Krishna class, which I want to do another one in the next couple days. And then we have a whole communication thing on Discord. Not to be confused with the record company Discord, on DISCORD. And also on that are our opening prayers. So you can just go to the hashtag prayers, mantras and prayers. So let's start. Narayanam namaskritya naram shaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamurandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chaksurun Milatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we are in, if you're very new to the show, this book tends to jump around to different stories. It works very similar to my mind, jumping around here and there. And right now we're in this particular part of the story, and it really brings you back to the ongoing theme that life is short. And in that short life, we're going to be put up with certain challenges. What am I going to choose in that challenge? Sometimes the challenge is life and death. I'm going to react. Am I going to reach towards love, light, Krishna, right? Krishna, you'll hear this word Krishna. Krishna is a player, especially he's an actual player in this section of the Bhagavatam we're in, where Krishna has appeared on the planet. Krishna is a way to say, a Judeo-Christian culture would say God. It's a way a 12-step group would say higher power. It's a way some people say the universe. That's all a different vantage point of the same higher energy. How do you know there's a higher energy? How do you know there's something supreme? Well, we are not dependent being. We are not independent beings. We are dependent on the whole. So even if you give that name, the universe supplies. The universe is an impersonal way of saying Sri Krishna. Whatever you want to call it, your higher power. In the Bhagavatam, we call it Krishna. Although we understand also that God is unlimited. The higher power is unlimited and therefore has unlimited names. Even in me, in my limited form as Raghunath, I go by different names. I go by Dad. I go by Honey. I go by You Jerk. I go by Ray Ray. My mother calls me Ray Ray. Don't you call me Ray Ray. So we have different names in this life, and also our higher power according to different cultures, according to different leelas. Like Krishna has different names according to different pastimes. We call him Govinda. We call him Makanchor. We call him Mukunda. So these are all different names of Krishna as well. So if you're new to the show, it can get confusing sometimes with these names. I just wanted to give you a little explanation before we dive in. And right now, Krishna is in this interesting conversation with one of his great, pure, liberated devotees who's on the planet, and she's suffered a tremendously difficult life. Even though she's a very, in one sense, materially, she's very well-to-do. She's a queen. She's got 5 children, but her husband died untimely. She was brought into the kingdom of her brother-in-law, which was supposed to be her kingdom. And she was sort of dismissed. Her children were attacked repeatedly by her nephews. They tried to kill her children. And her whole life, for the most part, has been situated in a type of anxiety and pain, etc. And now, in her old age, she's saying these very, very heartfelt prayers. And the most famous one, Kaustubha, would you like to share the most famous one we read the other day?
She said, I wish that all those calamities would happen again and again so that we can see you again and again. For seeing you means that we no longer see repeated births and deaths.
And we said that type of prayer is almost unprecedented when you think about praying, that you're actually praying for a reversal in life. Because when I'm destitute, when I feel like I have nowhere to go, that's when I find there's like an opening to really go right to Krishna, really right to God. And where I feel like there is nothing that's going to help me out here except you, Krishna. That's what we're talking about when we talk about yoga. Nowadays in the yoga community, you'll hear people say, it's about the balance between the body and the mind it's not. It's about connecting the jiva and the source of the jiva. That's yoga. That's what we're trying to do. That's where we're trying to go with this asana practice. That's why we're trying to go with this meditation practice. That's where we're trying to go with our kirtan practice. We're not doing kirtan just to sit around and sing interesting cultural folk songs. We're trying to connect. We're trying to connect with our source, with our higher power. It's actually a prayer to be connected. Okay. So, Kaustubha, why don't you read this one? Because
Okay.
it seems like I'm doing most.
So we're
sensitive.
on.
I got a big mouth, and I just want to hear your voice.
Okay.
I've
sure.
listened to the episodes on my downtime. and I decided I like your voice better than my voice. It's smoother. It's smoother and calmer, like a good radio station.
I don't think so, but okay. I'll read now.
NPR Kaustubha.
So she says, this is Kunti, by the way, Queen Kunti. I'm not sure if you mentioned her name.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
My obeisances are unto you. So she's praying to Krishna. My obeisances are unto you, who are the property of the materially impoverished. You have nothing to do with the actions and reactions of the material modes of nature. You are self-satisfied, and therefore you are the most gentle and are master of the monists.
What's the actual definition of a monist?
A monist, it means they're, you could say fundamentally there are two different ways to view the absolute truth, or you could say God. That some believe that I am you and you are me, and God is God, and I will always be me and you will always be you and God will always be God, and each one of us is an individual eternally.
Right.
So that's, that's not monism. That's, you could say, dualism, or that we believe that there's the soul and there's God, and they're individual, each one.
Okay.
Whereas a
monist
monist,
type of spiritual impersonalist.
Yeah, the monist belief is that there's all, in the end, all is one absolutely. Like where we can say dualist, but really, let's say the devotional view of Vedanta would be that we are individuals always. There's a oneness in quality, that we're all made of the same energy. We're all made of God's energy. We all share the same characteristics, eternality, knowledge and bliss, that's what we're made of and composed of. So we're all made of the same energy. In that sense, we're all one. But I still remain me and you still remain you. The monists believe that we're all one absolutely. That there's you, there's me, Kaustubha, and there's you, Raghunath, that at a certain point in reality, we merge into one, that we are all God. And that in the end, when we achieve our truth, the full goal of yoga, that we realize I am God and I am, and all there is one. There's no variety, there's no form, there's no distinction. So monists, it's like all one.
Okay, I like your definition better. Mohan just pulled it up on Wikipedia, and I'm more confused. Okay. Ever read a definition and you're like, this? Now I really don't know what it is. I think Kaustubha, you hit it right on the head.
Okay. So, and the point here is that he's there for the monist. He's there for the. You see, a lot of times, and again, Bhagavatam is going to look at three categories of thought: karma, which means I want to enjoy the material world, and so we can call those people the karmis, the fruit of workers. They're engaged with the law of karma, and they want to reap good results in this world and enjoy the world. And then there's the gyanis, or you could say the monists, who their idea is that no, all this form and all this duality is a cause of suffering. I want to transcend this world and merge into the oneness. And so we can call them monists. And then the third group is the bhaktas, the devotees, the Bhakti-yogis, who believe that we want to transcend this world. We know that we are spirit, that we're beyond this, but we want to transcend it. We believe that the highest goal is ultimately divine love, that we maintain our individuality for the sake of love. Our individuality exists for love. We exist for love. God exists for love. And therefore we remain individual so that we can actually, because love requires more than one.
Mm. It ties into this question we were talking about before the show, about, well, we just love, like some people say, well, I love all the different deities of India. Yeah. And it makes sense. And sometimes they say, well, why do you chant Krishna, Hare Krishna mantra? Why aren't we chanting Devi mantras or Shiva mantras? And sometimes there is that, and we do. But what happens is, in general, we love source. We love divinity. We love God. Just like if you say, I'm a heterosexual male, I love women. And as you refine your love, you go from very broad objectively, I love this particular woman, right? So first you want to be objective in one sense. And I think objectively speaking, there's a love for God. But then in bhakti, it gets so unique, you get so refined that you actually throw away objectivity and you actually fall in love with this particular deity. And Krishna of the Bhagavatam is that particular deity, which according to the Bhagavatam and the Vedas itself, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, he's actually the source. According to the Gita, Krishna is the actual source of all deities. And therefore we go right to the source in the worship. That doesn't mean there isn't other types of bhakti even taught within the Vedas, but we are going above different demigods or devis and going to the source, the devati deva, the deva of all the devas. And it's almost like going right to the top. If I got a question, I'm not going to ask my manager or the manager's manager. I'm going to go right to the CEO. And so when we approach Krishna, and Krishna sort of puts this out there in the Gita, he's like, you're asking these devis and devas for things of this world. Don't you understand? All these things are actually coming from me anyway.
The devas themselves are as well.
The devas themselves are coming from Krishna.
But you know, one way to look at it is like you just said, like the top. Another way to look at it is as the root, right?
Uh-huh.
So that like I could, and Bhagavatam is going to make this point. I could try to, a civilized person, a refined person, will appreciate what's given to them, rather than just accept it and have no gratitude. And
Right.
so we're meant to have gratitude towards the devas who are providing the sun, providing the moon, providing the earth, providing the water, providing all these things. And within that Vedic culture, there's the idea that to show my gratitude, I will perform this puja for this god or for that goddess. But what Bhagavatam is saying, what Gita is saying very clearly, Bhagavad Gita, at great length, Krishna will explain this, and Bhagavatam at still greater length.
It's what Jesus said. Jesus said the same thing.
What did Jesus say?
You got to stop worshiping all these gods and just worship one.
That's true, he did.
Right?
Yeah. I think in the Vedic, literature, you're going to find a more elaborate, detail in this. But that it's kind of like if I were to try to satisfy every leaf of a tree by watering each leaf, it's actually not the right process. So Krishna calls that in the Gita, he says, avidi purvakam. You're worshiping, but you're doing it avidi, like in kind of in the wrong way. That you, if you water the root of the tree, then all of the leaves are satisfied. And similarly, if you go to the root of all existence, then all the devas are satisfied. So, but we have, tomorrow's our question day. Thursday is going to be our question and answer day. And on Patreon, on that Discord
introduction song for question day.
Okay. Maybe questions and answers by Sham 69. How's that sound?
I'm into it.
All right. Maybe Parmananda could come up with a good one. If you people that are on our Patreon page, and through Patreon on our Discord message boards, we have a question and answer section there. And someone by the name of Makoto Dreams, I don't know what that means. It's a pretty
Makoto Dreams.
Handle.
Is that Native American, Makoto?
So in any case, she asked a really nice question. It's lengthy, but I think we should deal with it tomorrow. But it deals with understanding Krishna in relation to the others. It's Japanese, Akiko is saying. What does it mean, Akiko? Makoto.
Maybe she's a Coco Dreams.
It means truth.
It's truth.
Truth dreams. Okay. Thank you, Akiko-ji. So we'll deal with that question at length tomorrow, I think.
Okay. It's an important question, especially when you go to, big kirtans in America, and people sometimes will get angry. Why? Why are you only chanting Hare Krishna? This is, don't you want to pay respect to all the other deva and devis? And so I think it's an important question, and let's talk about it tomorrow.
Okay. But in this verse that we read today, Krishna says something, or Kunti says to Krishna a few very interesting things. She says, my obeisances are unto you, who are the property of the materially impoverished.
It's such, okay, go with it, because I'm ready to
well, first of all, let's say from the previous verse, I think we can understand this verse materially impoverished, not necessarily as someone living in dire poverty, but someone who's exhausted materially, who says, I've had enough of material life. Right?
Sick of it all.
I'm sick of it all.
I'm sick of it all.
I've tried to enjoy this world in this way and that way, and I've come to the conclusion that's not where my happiness lies. I've had enough. I want to reconnect. So for that person, Kunti's saying, you become the property of. They own you.
It's like no one in the material world to say that I am a slave. That's like the lowest thing. That's the last thing. It's the antithesis of what we want in this world. But those who are my obeisance to you, who are the property of the materially impoverished. Krishna becomes our property.
It's that concept that the great Bhakti-yogi saints and thinkers astonishes them. Yeah, it's such a it's such an esoteric, beautiful conception. We see in Sri Chaitanya's pastimes, like he'll say to a devotee, like that devotee is so in the lineage that you and I practice, Sri Chaitanya is seen as Krishna.
Oh, shit, I just muted you. Sorry.
I was saying in the lineage that you and I practice, which is technically called the Gaudiya Vaishnava.
Which lineage. Is technically now what they all practice.
What?
I used to say that also, like in the lineage that we practice to a bunch of classes, but if they're hearing from us, basically they're also imbibing this as well.
Okay, fair enough. At least
they're one of us right now.
Yeah, at least they're connecting with it.
Yes.
At very least. But Sri Chaitanya is seen as the incarnation or manifestation of Sri Krishna, so non-different from Krishna. And when he's speaking to his devotees, sometimes he'll say these things like, I am this devotee's property. They can buy or sell me in any marketplace. Right? Like that kind of love, like I'm yours entirely.
Right.
So it's saying that here the all-powerful, the divine source of everything says, I become the property of one who, in a sense, turns their back on the idea that my happiness is found in the material world and says, I love you. I want to develop my love for you. That's all I'm interested in. That he becomes a property. Now we'll read a verse if we get to it today about how that's manifested in Krishna's Leela in such a beautiful way.
Also with this, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to read a little of the commentary, but if you want to share something.
I was going to say the concept of sick of it all is actually quite beautiful. Sick of it all. But once you get sick of it all, where do you turn here's what I'm not sick of. And so if I am sick of it all, that means I have to renounce it, because sometimes when people get sick of it all, they'll just say, well, then I'm going to choose different ways to forget about it all. We don't want to forget about it all. We don't want our turning away from material life to dumb our intelligence down so I don't have to deal with it. Matter of fact, when you start dealing in bhakti, you are not sticking your head in the sand, avoiding reality. In fact, you're confronting reality. And what is reality? I'm here for a few days on this planet, a few years. Who am I? What am I really supposed to be doing? Material life will make you sick of it all. That's just what it is. Why? Because we don't belong in material life, because we're spiritual beings. So when we turn towards, if we're actually sick of it all, we should turn towards spirit. That has happened historically, not even within India, throughout the world. People are just in material life. I want my spiritual life. I need a new life. A matter of fact, a lot of the faces I'm looking at today, they're just on our Zoom chat. That's why I love Zoom, because I can interact and just see people that I know or new people. And I know their backstory. And they were all sick of it all. Not all, but a lot of them were sick of it all. Sick of it all. And in that disgust with the material world, like that big, like, why am I doing this? They turn towards spirit. It's quite beautiful.
It is.
Yeah.
So let's read just from this last paragraph in this commentary.
Sure.
Srila Prabhupada writes, because the Lord is the property of the devotees, and the devotees are the property of the Lord reciprocally, the devotees are certainly transcendental to the modes of material nature. Right? The modes of material nature, this material energy, is Krishna's energy that's meant for those that are not yet sick of it all. Right? It's meant for those that are saying, I think I can find something there. I think I can find some happiness there. So when one says I'm sick of it all, I just want God, then not only does that the two become the property of each other in a relationship of love. Right? Each one vulnerable in a sense to the other. Right? Like with full love, you make yourself vulnerable to the lover.
That's what love is.
That's what love is. So Krishna, we become vulnerable to God, but God becomes vulnerable to us. That's
a crazy concept. God becomes vulnerable to us
voluntarily for the purpose of love. And that's the mystery. Like that's the whole mystery of existence, is that we're meant to realize that again. That we had an episode back a few weeks ago that was called Fear of Spiritual Love, where towards the end of that we read a long commentary where Srila Prabhupada is describing how, due to different, you could say, psychological fears, people have difficulty conceiving of a personal form of God. But if one can understand this picture of God, that God is existing for the exchange of love, in the Upanishads it said raso vai saha, that God exists for exchanging rasa, or God consists of the mellows of transcendental love. That's what he exists for. Then you get a very different picture in that, and to understand what love is that that the lover becomes vulnerable to the beloved, right? So here it says, because the Lord is the property of the devotees, and the devotees are the property of the Lord reciprocally, the devotees are certainly transcendental to the modes of material nature. Through that connection, you see the monists are working hard to break every attachment in their mind to the material world. They're analyzing each one. They're turning their back on it, kind of getting a little cold. You know, it's like a stark kind of analysis where, you know what, family, turn my back on it, it's illusion. Society, turn my back on illusion. Even love, turn my back on it, it's illusion. Whereas here it's saying that when you connect with that divine in a reciprocal relation of love, you, without even separate effort, you transcend the material energy. Right? It's a very significant point that'll come out to the Bhagavatam.
Yeah. Matter of fact, if you really want to love in this world, you first fall in love with divinity. Yeah. That's the first person you date, is sweet baby Krishna. When you date sweet baby, and the whole, here's another interesting thing, the whole like fear. I don't like the concept of, you can't even say God around some people, although God, Mara, is back in fashion. Have you noticed that? God's back in fashion. There was a chunk of history, especially in the 90s, or how do you say 2010s? Whatever. You can't say the 90s, the 80s.
Still haven't figured that out yet. We're in the 20s now.
I know. But you couldn't say God. God was just like taboo. Now you can say God. But there is this concept of like, I have a fear-based relationship with God. Once someone says God, I recoil. This concept of a higher power, of source, of divinity is actually endearing. Why? Because they're not just up here and you're down here. They actually become your property and you become their property in any loving relationship where there's vulnerability. You will do anything for your beloved. They will do anything for you. Yeah. You feel like you are owned by them. Just like no one wants to be used in the material world. Yeah. But we want to be used. Krishna, please use me. And then Krishna's thinking, you use me. You used me. And it becomes this right intimate love. I've never heard it explained that sweetly.
Mm. You know, and of course we mentioned the Shikshastakam prayers previously in the show too, where Sri Chaitanya is progressing through this depth of divine love. And the last verse of the Shikshastakam, I mean, is, you know, I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so. Even if he mishandles me, or treats me roughly with his embrace, crushes me with his embrace, you know, I will know no one as my Lord, you know, but him. It sounds like, you know, psychologically, it sounds like, well, what is this, some kind of abusive
relationship with God?
Yeah. But it's a very esoteric understanding of divine love, where if you push love to its, you know, extreme, it's like, I'm yours no matter what, you know. So
in the material world, that will be a sick codependent relationship.
Yeah.
In the spiritual realm,
it's the highest realization,
it's a very high
highest
thing.
truth. Yeah.
Everything of the spiritual world has its reflection in the material world, but it's perverse.
Warped.
If you take that same warped. So if you take that same concept and bring it to the spiritual world, that's its origin, and it's natural, and it's actually quite beautiful.
And even it's said that sometimes in the reflection, the lowest thing in the reflection is actually the highest thing in the substance that's being reflected.
I like
so what seems abusive here is actually the highest there. But so in any case, this idea that okay, through this connection of love, that one transcends the influence of the material energy. So then the question is that through that connection, how does it become more pure and more pure? And the way that that's described in the Bhagavatam is when you become free from the motives that are found in karma, which means the motive to enjoy things of this material world, or the motive to escape the sufferings of this world, which is the motive of the monist. I just want to merge into the oneness and be free. When you're approaching and connecting to God without, dear God, give me the things of this world, or dear God, give me relief from the sufferings of this world, then you have what's called pure bhakti or uttama bhakti. And so the purport's going to go into that, or we could say unalloyed bhakti, right? Bhakti that's pure of any other motive except love. And that's really the nature of the self and what we're meant to recover through yoga. So he says that, again, that because the Lord is the property of the devotees and the devotees are the property of the Lord reciprocally, the devotees are certainly transcendental to the modes of material nature. That is a natural conclusion. Such unalloyed devotees are distinct from the mixed devotees, where their motive is mixed, who approach the Lord for mitigation of miseries and poverty, or because of inquisitiveness and speculation. The unalloyed devotees of the Lord are transcendentally attached to one another. For others, the Lord has nothing to reciprocate, and therefore he's called Atmarama, self-satisfied. In other words, okay, you're not coming to me with love. I'm satisfied on my own, but when you're ready to come back, I'm ready, to reconnect. Self-satisfied as he is, he's the master of all monists who seek to merge into the existence of the Lord. If you want that, I can give you that experience temporarily. Such monists merge within the personal effulgence of the Lord, called the Brahmajyoti, the divine light, you could say. But the devotees enter into the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, which are never to be misunderstood as material. Although merging into divine light might seem like the spiritual thing, and then having personal relationships with others, isn't that material? No, that should never be misunderstood as material. That's beyond the material energy, beyond the modes of material nature.
This is like opening up a whole new secret. Imagine if you had a bookcase in your house and you leaned on the bookcase and it just spun around and there's a whole nother room in your house you never knew existed. That's
like
what it is.
Batman or something? Where'd you get that?
Yeah, that's where I get it from. I've always wanted to find a secret passage in my house, personally, if you want to know the honest truth. I'm always constantly checking the molding. Maybe there's a button or something I have to push. But anyway, we talk about higher power. We talk about God. We talk about source, divinity. We talk about God is everything. God is the ocean. God is the mountain. God is the sunset. But this breaks into this like inner secret chamber where, yes, God is all those things. But there are these inner leelas or these pastimes. And although it appears sort of like a story, a myth, like an analogy. They're actually leelas that you actually enter into in your perfectional stage. It's actually quite almost unprecedented for what's ever been taught in the Western world. And that is now this really distinctly being shown. This is an allegory. This isn't just some story to give some secret meaning. This is the actual meaning. There's actually different chambers of the house. And this is when you go into those inner chambers, almost those secret private rooms that you didn't even know were there. And this is what the Bhakta is like most sort of gets obsessed with. It's almost like a loving transcendental obsession.
Yeah, it's like there's the kind of the practical, less esoteric, well, you could technically, I guess the word would be exoteric side of bhakti, right?
Exoteric.
Exoteric.
You know that word, Mara?
What would be a word for the opposite of esoteric? I mean, esoteric literally means less people will be able to understand it.
Esoteric, mundane.
I mean, I think the best word, though we don't use it very often, is exoteric. It's the opposite.
Okay.
But in other words, I say like practical or more tangible, more understandable side of bhakti. Things we were discussing in earlier shows, like the law of karma, reincarnation, the difference between the body and the soul, understanding consciousness,
Heavens and hells,
yeah,
mysticism, metaphysics.
Those are things that I could sit down with anyone and say, they may not believe that, but okay, I get where you're coming from. But then when you start to talk about the esoteric side, that exoteric side is meant to give us a foundation so that we can actually enter into the esoteric side. And the esoteric side is actually understanding about this divine love, that in the end, behind everything, there's always person, right? If you read a book, we know there was a person that wrote it. There's a person behind it, right? If we watch a film, we know there was a person that conceived of it, wrote the script, directed it, etc. There's a person behind it. If we go to a store and buy a sandwich, we know there was a person behind it that made that sandwich,
It's actually a fascinating philosophy. There's a person behind sickness. There's a person behind planets. There's a person behind the earth. Everything in Vedic thought, it's personal. There is a personality behind everything that appears just like wind. Come on, we can explain this scientifically. Or can you?
Yeah. Right. So I think a lot of the, I would say, so-called scientific thought is stemmed out of that psychological fear of that personal relationship. That there's some being that's greater than me that I'm meant to bow down to, that I'm meant, that. So we get over intelligent and we take the person out of everything. And we come up with some kind of wild theories that these incredibly complex patterns in creations, that there must be no person behind. If I go to a store and I buy let's say a vegan, whatever kind of sandwich, I know that there's a person, do you remember there used to be some tape that was going around the Bhakti yoga circles? This was like decades ago. It was like a comedy tape.
A tape.
Do you remember that? And there was one skit on it, and it was about the primordial soup.
I do remember that.
Right. Like, how there's a scientific theory that there's a primordial soup, and then somehow that soup turns in, begins to transform and turns into the world eventually.
Right.
So someone came into the restaurant and said, "Oh, well, so what's on the menu here? Oh, we got the, favorite. Here's the primordial soup. Oh, I'll try that. Hey, this is delicious. Who made it? Nobody made it. What do you mean nobody made it? It's just, we come here every day and it's already made,
That's a good skit.
So the college kids are eating it up,
It's interesting. We were talking about Buddhism the other day. Yeah. What is the source of nothing? Nothing also has a source. Krishna is the source of nothing.
Yeah. So there's that idea that there's always a person behind it. And so if you go behind if you keep going behind it, if we go behind, you could go behind, like, where does my vegetable come from? A lot of the vegetable, it comes from the sun. The energy of the sun is invested into the vegetable, right? But then if I go behind the sun, we find that there's a deva, Surya, who's the god of the sun, that's a person. But then where did Deva come from? Where did the Deva come from? Gita is going to say, you know, Krishna is the Deva Deva, that he's the source of the Devas. So that Krishna is the cause of all causes. If you keep going back, you get to that form. So in any case, the esoteric side means get to know that person in a relationship of love. And then when we think of God, generally we don't think of someone that we run around with. We think, you know, generally the conceptions of God are like this almighty, massive, awe and reverence kind of approach. But when we get to the esoteric side of bhakti, you see that for the sake of intimate love that Krishna manifests to his devotees, as a friend, as a child, as a lover, because the whole purpose to existence is the exchange of intimate love. So that's the esoteric side. And unless someone's ready to kind of approach that with an open mind and a mature attitude, there's no point in getting into it. But if you are ready, you see how that becomes the highest yoga.
Why do some traditions use a fear-based narrative to get people to do what they want them to do?
Well, that's always there. I mean, even in the Vedic tradition, that's going to be there to some extent, but there's something more than that, right?
Yeah, it's not like, even like a father, get in the car right now.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes there is like an idea of if you don't do that, you're not going to get dessert. You know, you almost like use, it's not good parenting, I don't think, but you use things to say, you're not going to get this if you don't do this. I don't find that so much in the Bhakti tradition, although in the bigger scope of Vedic tradition, you might hear some of that. But you never hear so much. I can't think off the top of my head that.
Are you kidding me? You read Bhagavatam, you're going to hear about all kind of scary stuff.
Well, but it's not sweet baby Krishna who's doing the punishing. A lot of the times the punishment comes from the reaction of our bad choice.
It only comes from that.
Some deva giving you that reaction.
Yeah.
It's not just because you're going to get a swift kick in the butt for breaking a rule.
Right. I mean, as we mature, we begin to become motivated in higher ways. And ultimately, the devotee is motivated by love. That becomes the entire motive. Yeah.
We got a great chat board going on. I just want to share with the regular podcast audience. If you're on our Zoom group, we got a great chat board that goes on simultaneously. They have a whole inner dialogue going on while we're talking.
We can't always pay attention because we're trying to hold the show, but I think where's Mara with the music? We just ran out of time. There she is.
Let's all sit around and chastise Mara today. What do you think? Thanks, everybody, joining us at Apple Podcasts and Spotify and any other way you get this, YouTube. Hey, if you like what we're doing, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps to get our name out there in the public universe of podcasts. And also, if you want to connect with us in our inner chamber, come to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. We appreciate any support that you give. We all connect through there. And everybody who joined us late, I want to say good morning to you on Zoom.
93 people today.
Yeah, 93. Was 98, Mara says.
Oh, wow.
Julie Panzera show. Good morning. Jackson, good morning. Alice from Bologna, good morning. Get back inside, you're quarantined. Get back in that house. That was an distasteful joke. Sorry. Sri Rupa, I don't know if I said Sri Rupa good morning, but good morning again, Sri Rupa. Yes, Krishangi, good morning. Jeez, we got a whole Finland posse here. How do you get big in Finland? And New Zealand is on the show today. Good morning, New Zealand.
I see that Cleo is back there with Zoe.
Oh, Buckman G is here?
Buckman G, yeah.
Let's see her. Zip it. Fuji, good morning. You got to put our hands up when it gets to this part. And you got to go like this. Walk through my hands. Because today, what's it called? It's Krishna Karaoke. Krishna Karaoke link today. Josephine, good morning. Lost my mouse is lost. Now one hand. Now the other hand.